I want to talk a little bit about the difference between franchising and licensing. And most likely, franchising is this thing that you hear about, like with Subway, where someone owns a local chapter of Subway and that's their franchise in the Subway overall scheme. And that is part of what I am talking about. So let's talk a little bit about a license first, because all of this comes back to trademarks and brands, like the Subway brand. So, with a license, anytime you want to license usage of a trademark, what you would essentially do is have an agreement in place, hopefully, and that license agreement will lay out how the person that's receiving the license, the licensee, what they can do with the trademark and the brand, how they can use it, when they can use it, what of the trademarks and brands that your company has can be used, and then they'll pay you for that, whether it be royalties out of sales from campaigns or whether that be money that they just pay that's a flat fee on a monthly basis or annual basis. Whatever arrangement you work out for payment, that's a intellectual property license. They receive some intellectual property, the trademark and the brand. You receive some money for their use of that brand and those trademarks. Now, a license like that, that's an easy thing to do. You just put that agreement in place, you make sure you enforce it, and you receive the money, and you police and make sure that they aren't using the brand and trademarks in a way that's not allowed by the agreement. Super easy, there's no filings with the state or anything like that required, and it's actually a great way for nonprofits to raise money when their brand is really noticeable and out there, and I have another video on that. But a license, again, easy, simple, pretty informal, just an agreement. Now a franchise, on the other hand, it adds one more piece to the puzzle. And essentially what that means and what that piece is that when you add significant control, right? So going back to that license, you give someone the trademark and the brand, they're going to pay you for that usage, and now we're adding to that significant sort of oversight and control over basically everything that they do with that brand and trademark. Now I know this sounds a lot like those guidelines and those parameters that would go in the license agreement, but with franchise, it's much more involved. It's almost as though you're going to be there and overseeing how they do their business and how they run their business with your brand and your trademarks, to the point where it's almost like you're a boss over them in what they're doing. And so let's jump back to Subway, because that's a great example, and that's why those are franchises. So Subways all look the same, they all smell the same, not part of the equation here, but you know it's true. They all have the same branding, they have all the same processes, they have all the same sort of recipes, all of that. Everything that a Subway does is significantly controlled by what the expectation of Subway corporate wants them to do, and as a result, from getting the brand and the trademarks, paying for that usage, and having significant control over the usage, that makes it a franchise. Now, why does that matter, right? Like, I'm just calling it words. Is it just an agreement? No. A franchise is much more burdensome to put into place and to renew and keep maintenance on a regular basis, because not only do you need an agreement in place that discusses all this, but you have to put together a giant franchise prospectus, essentially, that lays out all of these details of your business and your finances and your plans and your forecasts and the risks and the liabilities. And then you got to give this huge, scary packet to the franchisee, to whoever's going to be taking that brand and running something under your brand. And then once they've read through all that and they understand it and they agree to it, you also need to be registered as a franchisor in your state and any state in which you actually have franchises. So, of course, that means filing fees, and they're not cheap. And sometimes states require you to put a bond up that's in the numbers of thousands of dollars to ensure that if anything sketchy happens, there's some money there to handle it. So, let's recap all that real quick. A normal just IP license goes with brands and trademarks. You can do it with copyrights and other things, but we're talking trademarks here because that's what franchises apply to. But trademark and brand, permission to use it, you get paid money for that, and you can put some light sort of restrictions, some kind of real small parameters around how they can use the brand. Now, a franchise is the trademark and the brand usage, payment for that usage, and then significant oversight and control over how they use that brand and those trademarks. And that is a franchise, and that requires registration and annual renewals and reporting on that franchise. So, big difference. Most of the time people don't realize, and they totally overlook, that what they have is actually a franchise. And it's important that you don't mistakenly have a franchise thinking you have a license, because you can get dinged pretty badly with some fines and penalties and some different sort of enforcement actions from government offices that look to enforce and make sure franchises are being done properly. So, franchise is not a license. It is a much more significant involvement that includes a license and has lots of filing fees and costs and maintenance and oversight. So, as always, hope that this was helpful.